everyone, and welcome to another week of Hot Topics. It's so exciting to be back with you again, as we've got our guests with us. We've got Hloni and myself, and it is really great to have you joining us once again tonight. And so tonight we carry on with the second part of our Chaos of Christmas series, and we are so excited for it. We all know what it's like being in a family or part of a family. When we have Christmas, it's chaotic, and this year more than ever, it really has been a chaotic year, and so I can't imagine that our Christmas will be any less chaotic. And so is the narrative of Christmas for us. As we look over the years, and also in our Bibles, we find that there was quite a lot of chaos surrounding the events of Christmas, but yet we find a way to embrace the mystery of the message of Christmas. And so we've got some great guests lined up here today with us as we explore the topic of the pagan holiday that some people believe is around Christmas. But before we get into that, I'd love to ask our guests to introduce themselves to us tonight at home.
Good evening. I am Craig, a Methodist minister. Thank you.
Hi guys, I am Sipho Lukosi. I am the child of Methodism. Yes.
Thanks, guys. It's great to have you joining us. Tonight we have two very brilliant people with us, and we are so excited. And like I said earlier, we are exploring the topic of whether Christmas is really based around a pagan holiday or if there's pagan influence around Christmas. Doing some research and preparation, there's quite a few people that believe it is. And so I'm going to ask Hloni just to explain a bit of that background to us.
And so as we go in, I think Ilse has rightfully said that these are some of the things that kind of make Christmas chaotic for some of us. There is a growing group of young people who refer to themselves as church dropouts. And they lash out all these reasons as to why they no longer follow the church, they no longer believe in the church. And among those reasons is this whole idea of Christmas being a pagan holiday. There are various stories around it where some say it actually comes from Roman culture, it comes from Roman tradition, it comes from historic events when a particular Roman god was being elevated to say, hey, this is now the main person. And now the question we then want to throw out there is, can we as Christians just appropriate pagan holidays and bring in our own story into that narrative and then continue to celebrate our own story in using this particular pagan holiday without distorting our own belief?
Well, as always, interesting topic, Hloni and Ilse. And yes, I also have a few friends that I know, a few classmates from university. I can safely say that in my class and in the conferences, in the physics conferences I attend even today, I am typically the odd one out. Most of them think most of the tenets in which we base our Christian faith and what we celebrate is based on a fallacy and something that is not really Christian, like adopting a pagan cult and just giving it a new name. So they find a lot of inconsistencies and a lot of claims which we cannot justify through reason. So I agree with that. That is certainly there. But of course, if you give yourself a bit more time to probe the questions further, because it's always important not to subject yourself to or allow yourself to be consumed by the first answers you receive. It's important to ask the questions, but don't be consumed by the first answers you receive. So, true, yes. From what I understand and from my education, the celebration of the birth of gods was never a Jewish tradition from which Christianity was born. But of course, Christianity, as I said last week, there was never a single version of early Christianity. There were early Christianities. And that is where, of course, the various gospels will come from. So, but I'm saying that because Christianity, what made it a distinct faith, were influences from a Jewish background and the context in which it was born. And that context, it was, if you like, you can say it was a Hellenistic context or a Roman imperial context. By that I mean, just before Rome took power or colonized that Judean area, people who were in power there were the Hellenists, the Greeks. So all that influence, the Greek influence, the Roman influence, when Christianity is born, 2nd century, 3rd century, when it is solidified, it takes influences from all those backgrounds, and we can speak about that later. But I think as a preliminary point, it's important to make that point that Christianity, that is what made it distinct. Actually, some writers even posit that that's what made Christianity to succeed more than the blessing from Constantine. It was its ability to kind of synthesize different influences from different backgrounds and therefore have this big family. So whether that is right or wrong, maybe something we can discuss. But the truth is, even evangelism itself, it was a Roman influence. So whether that illegitimizes Christianity or makes it genuine is something we can discuss further down. But yes, that is there.
So for me, when we look at this, we've also got to remember that when there is syncretism, we will always find ourselves in the whole process of a culture that evolves and brings us into spaces of new understanding. And when we have syncretisms, it will also allow us to understand how we do assimilations. And when we do assimilations, those assimilations then brings us into saying, you know what, I can borrow from that and I can borrow from that, and I can create something entirely new. We see this in various other assimilations within our Christian conversations. We see that when we syncretize, we see that particularly between our black and our white cultures, and how these cultures speak and challenge each other. And when these cultures speak and challenge each other, that we in our linguistic way or mannerisms, that we then create words called diversity, and then find comfortability in saying that because we are so diverse, we've simply got to make spaces where we can reconcile these differences. And that's why today, though we would undoubtedly believe that there is something as the birth of Christ, that all these cultures and all these religions that have evolved has brought us to a deep understanding, where not only as theologians but as free thinkers, we ask the question, is what we have out there legitimately what Christ would want us to have? And the answer would be no.
I found it really interesting that you both highlight how there's assimilation and there's this adaptation of Christianity over the years. Maybe just to take it a step back for our viewers at home to highlight where we get this idea of the pagan possibly influences of Christianity and the state. In my research, I found some things, around how if we take the date of when John the Baptist would have been born, and we add the pregnancy of Mary to it, we don't find the 25th of December. As someone who's grown up in the church, that's something that has never really occurred to me up to the point of now starting to, as a young adult, think about our faith and whether everything we believe as our gospel is historically and factually true, and if not, and if so, what does this mean for us? Another thing that I found was how it highlights that the 25th of December is actually a pagan holiday that was celebrated, especially in the northern hemisphere, around the winter solstice, and which that would have then impacted, and how this is then borrowed. So how do we understand how this then adapts into our Christian story?
So thanks for that, Ilse. So I think you have a few things here that you raise. And maybe I'll start with the last one. Yes. If you dig up Roman history, you find that I think that day was the celebration of the birth of the pagan god Saturn, or Saturnalis in full. And so there are a few issues here. There are astrological issues, astronomical issues, because even the planets after that were named after such gods. I mean, there's a planet called Saturn and all that. And the fact that it was a winter solstice, and I think down here is summer solstice in a few days, should be the 23rd or something. So, I mean, even the Christmas trees are green because they were anticipating, of course, that things were going to be better and they were going to plant and have a harvest and all that. So, it's important to understand in context that yes, this is a Roman practice, if I may say. But one might also ask, I mean, during those times, what would you define as a Christian practice? Really, what? Because Christianity is defined much more later than that. So basically, where we are today, I think it comes back to that very issue, Ilse. If you try to do the math using the Bible, you might miss something because those gospel writers, perhaps it was not in them to write in such a way that you can reconstruct the date. There were lessons they were meaning to convey to you, right? About, of course, the birth. They don't speak about the date. So we can try in our own endeavors to try weave together the dates. I mean, there are people who try calculate the age of the universe by adding from Genesis and just reading it literally up until today. Of course, young people, particularly like me, are going to have a problem with that. So again, when you read the Gospels, as I said last week, it's important to put it in your mind that you are reading gospel. You understand? And I'm going to let Craig come in here. You are reading gospel. Perhaps what you can ask is, what was this trying to teach the early church, rather than trying to reconstruct scientific calculations back to the day of Jesus. We can try to do that, but I'm not sure about how accurate we can be because the Gospels are not giving us that.
So for me, I would read completely different. I would read into the text and see that the text gives me hints. And you know that the way our Wesleyan tradition would want us to think, it would want us to reason, it would want us to look at the tradition. And when I look at that as a farmer, having served in the Eastern Cape with farmers, there is no way that I would take my sheep out during winter month, just as a start. And the story says, whilst shepherds watch their flock by night. Flock can only be watched in summer, not in winter. In winter, they would be found in the penfold, right? And they're not found there. The story depicts a scene that has a bright star that could only be seen in a month differently, and not as we sit with it today. And when we look at those examples, I think that those examples would invite us into moments where we begin to critically think about how we interpret text for people as theologians. Because as theologians, we bring the narrative. And the narrative that we bring has often been a narrative of lie. Or also depending through which scopes we look at it and then say, but this is the whole thing of syncretisms, where we go with the flow and we say, for the sake of not disturbing the order, let's settle for this. And that's where we become wrong, because all of these other things then is birthed out of a lie that we create. And that's what we are being critiqued about. And so I would want us as theologians to read slowly to the hints that the scripture give us. And one of the profound hints would just be the song, Silent Night, Holy Night, a winter story. And so for us, would not be this season at all. And maybe none of those gospels, as you say, speak into the narrative of historicness that we could pinpoint. And maybe that's not the important thing, but what is the important thing is that the story from Genesis and the story into the Gospels invite us to understand what it means of God with us, the whole story of Emmanuelness.
It's wow. Thank you so much. And now I'm thinking of someone who's sitting at home and they're saying, for instance, we know that we've got a Sabbath concept that the Jews still observe on a particular day. And the day is actually important to the concept. They do not remove it from the concept. The first thing that then I would be curious about as someone sitting at home is, what makes Christmas different? Why is it that we do not honor it on a particular day? Why is it that we do not try pin it down to a particular day, but instead we say, when it comes to Christmas, the day is immaterial. What is important is that we celebrate the story of God with us. Why is it that the day is not important when it comes to Christmas, but it is important when it comes to the Sabbath? That is the first thing that I would want to raise. And then the second thing would be, by then allowing these elements such as the pagan holiday that we then use to celebrate Christmas, are we not also allowing for other creepy stuff to make it into the narrative, such as Christmas trees, which also have a story on their own? And then are we not allowing stuff such as the story of Saint Nicholas, and who's the other one again? I think it was
Santa Claus. It's also got a very different
was it Santa
meaning.
Claus and Saint
Yes.
Nicholas? Yes, Krampus. Are we not allowing those narratives that are sometimes problematic into the Christmas story by making an exception to this particular pagan holiday?
So here's I think what I think, Hloni. I think for me, what is important about the day, more than, and the reason I'm saying that is because I'm not doing history and science here. You understand that? So that's very important for me. I'm not doing history or science. I'm trying to do theology here. So the important thing is, what would this have meant to the people who wanted to celebrate it? Why did they have to? I mean, I can give you an example. We have Easter, right? As you say, we have Sabbath, and we have Christmas, right? But the Sabbath has, as I say, Jewish background, and the Jews are not confused about it. So the reason we have these questions and these small confusions, maybe not small, in Christianity, it's because this is a faith that, if I'm not using wrong words, is an amalgamation of a couple of ideas, right? So one person might criticize Christians for using that day which was reserved for a pagan god. But at the same time, to them, it was important to note down that God did break through space-time and come and be with us here. So if now, with the benefit of hindsight, if we celebrate things like maybe Sabbath, some Christians celebrate Sabbath, and if we celebrate Easter, and we don't pay attention to the birth, because the birth makes the life of Jesus important. Unlike Easter, we are concentrating on the passion narratives, the death, the suffering of Jesus, as if his life is only made up by that weekend. Yet he had lived a couple of years with which people could draw inspiration and learn what it means to live in the kingdom of God. So that's why Christmas becomes, it's important for us to celebrate. I'm trying to stand in the position of the early church to celebrate this day, because this is what elevates the life more than the death. So now the second part, I would say, so when we go to that text, and to the text that even Craig mentioned, we try to pull out the date. You mentioned to say, aren't we opening up other influences? Of course we are. Of course we are. That's why we have a tradition. That's why we stand on a tradition which was birthed much closer to guard these other influences, which might be there. You understand? So I think you cannot shy away from the fact that Christianity will have, but when we say foreign influences, which one is original? Because even the Jewish one is questionable, because Jewish faith is not really Christianity. So we have to live with those threats, maybe with those contradictions, and that's where tradition is important, for it to be a vanguard for us in terms of what is important for our faith and what is not.
But then, Sipho, before we go to Craig, then as a young person, I'd be like, ow, you guys are acting as though your faith is secure, because I think at the heart of the exodus of young people is them saying, I almost said it in Zulu, it would say, "Ngokubhaqile."
Yeah.
I've found you wanting as a church. You act very certain
Can I
when
try
you
again?
are very questionable.
Can I try again before Craig comes in? That's why I'm saying it's important to ask questions. And my experience, even with well-educated young people, my experience is that when it comes to issues of theology and biblical inerrancy, their questions are half. They don't go the full mile. They ask a question and are satisfied with easily finding Christianity wanting. I mean, I don't see anything wrong with this logic that perhaps, of course, Craig might caution with this thing of synthesis. But the truth is that's what happened. And if I tell you that, I mean, I don't put my head on the block for the 25th. I mean, Craig argued for that. I don't put my head on the block for that. But I do put my head on the block for the fact that the Lord was born. He came here. In isiZulu, to say, "Wakha ngaphakathi kwabantu." I used to read that in KZN when I was at the seminar. The word became flesh, and that is what is important. It's that which we want to focus on. Because now this is a beginning of something. God is breaking, this is what we call, I'm sorry, you Lloyd, inaugurated eschatology. Something special is starting with this day. So we might not be right in terms of the calculations, but we do hold it dear that there was a particular day when everything was no longer the same because God became flesh.
So for me, it's important that we grapple with understanding that these celebrations is really the moments in our lives when we. So, for instance, today is the 8th day of Hanukkah in the Jewish festival, just lighting a celebration of lights in simple translation. And therefore, the problem with us as Christianity is that we don't adequately want to grapple with our understanding of our ancestry. And our ancestry as Christians is our Jewish culture. And we seem to push that away. And because we haven't delved into the essence of that and what that means, we have a very fluid faith, almost. The thing that makes it real, or that makes my faith real for me, in the expression of, let me use hymns as you have used. Let me use 246 in Xhosa, which says, Lukhangela kuya mfana wase Calvary, is when I constantly keep my focus on the sustainer of my faith being Christ. Then that makes sense. That makes sense that there is this incarnation that happens for me and that gives me understanding. But the expressions of it might be entirely different. And that the dichotomy is how we give those expressions. And we make exactly the same mistakes as the fathers of the faith. The fathers of the faith made those because they needed to use that which was famous. Remember, during this time, that which was famous was the heathen festivals around this time, celebrating their sun god, celebrating many festivals of sacrifice, children sacrifice, and we can name a few. And then to say, but how do we take those people and make them part of us? In seminary, they would argue and say, you've got to be, what's the word? You've got to be woke. You've got to be a person that speaks into your context today. So we would have just seen during this lockdown period, that which went absolutely viral was this song, Jerusalem, right? And we took something that we know would be a culture that would not be normative, and we made it normal. And so we continuously do that as a community of faith, where we take something that we know has a completely different meaning and we inculcate it. And when we inculcate, we will always stand in danger of losing the essence. So we move away from the greatness of focus on a God here with us onto all the purchasing and all that stuff. And that's not important. But what we as theologians and as faith people must do is to continuously direct the narrative into that which it should be. We've got to continuously undo the untruths And the untruths are the stories that we tell. We tell stories during Christmas and we say the wise men were there. They weren't there. You know, those are lies. Jesus would be horrified at us. And we've got to undo that. We've got to unravel that. And as we unravel, even at the expense of Ngupoka, Labadala, let us poka them, man. They were wrong to teach us wrong things. But it doesn't mean that when we are enlightened to the truth, that the truth should be hidden. Sometimes our naked truth is not easy. And the naked truth in this conversation is that we have inculcated a lot of heathen practices. And when we sit with that foundation, every channel would be open for everything. And by heathen, I'm not wanting to say, because it's still a religion that would have been there before Christianity. I mean, Christianity is one of the later ones. And so it's almost as if I'm wanting to say to Christians, hey, Bonina, uyaganga. You are out of order to make yourself super standard to anything else. Because what if the heathen says about me that my practices are heathen? Because I come later. And
Actually,
when I come later, then I toe the line.
Actually, there's a saying, I'm not sure which father said this, but he said before Constantine, it was difficult to be a Christian. But after Constantine, it was difficult to be a pagan.
Totally. And you know, it also invites us to understand that though others may say to us, do not urinate. You can translate this. Do not urinate in the same fountain that you want to drink.
Yeah.
Sometimes now in this season, I must urinate because sometimes my urine might just clear the fountain.
Yeah. So basically, it means ungachameli umthi that will shelter you tomorrow.
So this
If you
conversation, sir, might be a conversation that others would say, yay, you are urinating in our fountain. Maybe.
But maybe let me see if I might offer just a slight pushback, just try to stand in the line of the apologists. Because most of these practices, actually, Craig, they come out of 325, that first council, am I right? And we know that that's when Constantine, who was the then Roman emperor, gave a blessing. But also, that seemed as a political move, because this was a political principle of Rome, right? And the main ethic of Rome, they wanted no dissent, and such that their main line was the Pax Romania, the peace of Rome. But the peace of Rome was very violent. You can understand its empire, right? So I'm saying, if I'm sitting during that time, and I am a priest, I am a follower, I am a disciple, I'm part of this new sect. It started as a Jewish sect, but now it's all over. It's all over the Decapolis, the Roman, the Rome, because it even got to Rome. So I'm saying, if you are sitting in the early church with that, and here you are being persecuted, and you get an opportunity to establish yourself within the system that persecutes you, you get an opportunity to be able to preach the gospel, right? But at the same time, you have to make certain compromises. And such compromises, you also plan to use them to your own advantage. And this idea I'm articulating is actually out there from I think it's Avril Cameron. She writes the book, The Rhetoric of Empire, how Christianity came about. So part of it, we are still celebrating the birth of Christ. We are just converting what the people here who are persecuting us, and this, actually, if we adopt some of these things, it's what will take for them to accept us. We will be able to preach, though in a compromised manner. So that trade, I can see that trade-off. That's why I'm saying I'm being an apologist. I can see that trade for the sake of preaching the gospel. Because just the last point, because if you read the book of Romans, just the last verses, you find Paul saying all these apostles still preached in Rome without fear. Meaning within those contexts, they still were able to preach the gospel.
So my world is a world that is beyond just the Bible.
Yeah.
That's my world. My world who'd identify Germans and say that the Germans had a god called Odin, and Odin who'd have night flights. And when Odin have night flights, which is the whole concept of Santa Claus flying at night, right? It reminds me of witchery. And then what Odin would do is Odin would decide. Imagine this kind of power, this kind of mini-god power, that Odin decides who to curse and who to bless. And then the legacy of Odin says that he makes a mistake one day and he curses those he shouldn't have cursed. And that's exactly the narrative that we sit with. We wrong and we engage and we adopt that which we should not adopt. And in that process, we make these mistakes.
So my question maybe is for those that are at home is, what do we do with all of this? You know, I love listening to you speak, but what do we do with this? Do we come as, you know, maybe a young family that has young children? Do we start from the beginning and say that Christmas is not something that we celebrate because it is so infiltrated with half-truths and there's so much pagan influence? Or do we celebrate it but make sure that we exclude various expressions of it? What do we do with this? My fear is that if we don't speak about Christmas, we have one time a year in most churches where we speak about the story of Jesus is coming to earth as a baby. It is God with us. If we start from the point of saying Christmas is not something we celebrate as Christians, do we not miss out on an opportunity to teach about the coming of Jesus with us, which highlights a very important aspect, is that he is fully God and fully human. And this is the time that Christmas presents to us. If we now find ourselves completely ruling out Christmas, we miss this. Do we then have to find other opportunities, and how? But if we find ourselves saying, okay, Christmas is something that we will accept, knowing that there is influence that is not necessarily Christian in it, how do we go about it in taking what we've discussed and making it a little bit more practical for our families at home?
Do you want me to go? One of the things that I learned during my tenure in Swaziland is that King Sobhuza, the then king before the current one, made this statement. And he said to the nation then, cut a hole in your ear. They all ran and cut a physical hole in their ear. What the king actually meant was sift your truth and take what is good and keep the good. What you don't want, discard. So that, as an introduction for me, says that I am then invited to look at the whole concept of Christmas, and I can understand that how it started was wrong, but I can take from it that which is good. And that which is good for me is to say to my children and to my children's children, what does this do to your heart? Because it's the heart that matters. And when the heart matters, then the heart will sift through what was wrong. Bringing in moments of confrontation for us as parents to say, we don't have to lie about the whole Santa Claus issue, because God would not want us to lie. That's not of God. But we can take that which is beautiful and that which pulsates us into positive happenings and then say, how does all of this bring me closer to Jesus? So for me, does it bring me closer to Jesus? And if I can feel it here, if it excites me, I don't put up a Christmas tree because I know what that means for me personally, right? But I do have the excitement that my God left his throne and is with me. And I celebrate that, not only cognitively, but I celebrate that as a heart experience, and I celebrate that as something that I share with others.
Yeah, and I think it's important that for Christmas, this is God coming to us. This is very important. I think up until then, people had always thought about going to God, having to live well so that you inherit that. But this is radical. This is like during that time when John was baptizing Jesus, and like the cloud was schizophrenic. That's the Greek word. It torn up it was torn, and that dove came down. Like God can always come down to us. But just as a last point, just on the main topic, that see, if Christianity, look, during that time, if Christians had met Africans like me, they would have classified me as a pagan. Right? I mean, that's what started the whole racism issue after the Reformation. It was about who has a god, who's barbaric, and then so if they had met me, people like me, abantu basekhaya amabhaca, where I'm from, I mean, so the fact that Christians could negotiate with others give me confidence that if they can be able to negotiate with me, yet still present this compassionate, this loving God, this merciful God that chooses not to stay in heaven, whatever that means, but chooses to come and experience our plight, be sick, be stabbed as we are stabbed in Soweto, be raped, experience the whole human plight, be homosexual, be discontinued from the community. He experienced all those human conditions. And for me, that is what is important, that anyone who is human, just by the fact that we celebrate that day, whether 25th or whenever, they can identify with this Lord. I think for me it's very encouraging. That pagans like Amazulu, Amaxhosa, Amabhaca, if they had met with Christians earlier, probably they would have influenced Christianity. That's nice.
I love it so much. And one would then try to understand the logic of a person who looks at other people's cultures as ungodly and yet puts up a Christmas tree. Yes. That's just how confused we are as a human race. But thank you so much to Craig and Sipho. This is our last Hot Topics conversation for 2020, and it has really been an exciting journey, and just the chaos of Christmas has on its own been an exciting journey. And our hope and our wish for you is you will be able to see the mystery under everything that might prove to be a chaos to the story, that might make it difficult to understand and embrace the story for what it is, that you might see the mystery of Jesus born among us, God who comes to us as we are. And so that's it from our Hot Topics team. We look forward to hearing from you. Do connect with us. Do share our social media pages. Do press like. Do share the video. It helps for algorithms. And this is your contribution in helping us to spread the good message. Do take care. Thank you.
We celebrate Christmas as part of the many rituals that orders, restores, and reorganizes the rhythm of life. It is in this rhythm of life that we get to meet the identity of God. God is love. It is this God who is love who has managed to charm the world throughout ages, not with military power, but with love. This God who charms the world, who charms Israel, and charms even the Virgin Mary into agreeing into being the Mother of God. And in the story of Christmas, we now meet this Word becoming flesh, as John would say. But it is more than just Word becoming flesh, but it is love personified, born on the margins. Born on the margins to remind us that the revolution for a rhythm of life to be reordered will come from the margins, from a place of people who want to contribute to this rhythm of life from pure hearts. We celebrate Christmas for that reason, among many other reasons. And more importantly, we are reminded through the story of Christmas to love God, to love the neighbor, and to love ourselves.